This video is part of the lecture Plant Breeding in a Modern World in the scope of the course Applied Genetics at the University of Ostrava. So far we have seen how controlled crosses followed by elimination of undesired genetic combinations in the field can produce a true breeding line. That is a plant which always gives the same phenotype when reproducing with itself. This is because pure breeding lines are homozygous, so even if chromosome recombination and segregation physically occur during their gamete production, the resulting gametes are all identical to one another. Controlled crosses can also be used to produce hybrids. Hybrids are simply the F1 offspring of two distinct purebred lines. Both parental lines are homozygous for different alleles, and the result of their cross will be a hybrid plant that is entirely heterozygous. All offspring produced from such a cross will be genetically identical because they have inherited exactly the same gene from their mother and their father. However, if we leave the F1 hybrids to reproduce with one another, their offspring will be anything but homogeneous. This is because in heterozygote hybrids, chromosome crossovers and recombination, coupled with their pairing at random during fertilization, will produce unique genotypes for virtually each of the F2 offspring. So then why do we breed hybrids? Hybrids benefit from heterosis. That is, hybrid offspring usually outperforms both its parents. For example, when you cross two maize pure lines, LH198 and PHG47, the hybrid offspring grows faster and bigger than either of its parents. The heterosis advantage is not simply the hybrid inheriting the best characteristics of each parent. The increase of performance goes beyond the simple additive effects of both parental lines. For explanation of what additive effects are, watch the Heritabilities playlist. So what can cause heterosis? There are several possible explanations. According to the dominance hypothesis, the deleterious effects of recessive alleles that would be otherwise exposed in purebred homozygous lines are masked in heterozygote hybrids. Imagine that this gene A has two alleles, the yellow one being dominant over the white recessive one. The recessive white allele is also deleterious, meaning it has negative impact on the crop performance. If an individual is homozygote recessive for this allele, as could be the case in a purebred line, then its growth will be reduced. Another gene is related to the same trait plant growth, with one dominant and one recessive deleterious allele. So another pure line that is now homozygote recessive for the allele B will also have reduced growth for different reasons. If these two lines are crossed together, their heterozygote offspring will not suffer the deleterious effect of the recessive alleles because they will be masked by the dominant allele inherited from the other parent. So the heterozygote F1 hybrid is going to benefit from heterosis. Alternatively, heterozygote loci can be overdominant. When two different alleles are found on the same locus in a heterozygote, their interaction is more beneficial than when two identical alleles are on the same locus. So the more heterozygote loci an individual has, the more performant it will be. More recently, the studies of transcriptomes and proteomes have shown that their expression is different in hybrids compared to that of the mid-parent value. Imagine that two purebred parents have different levels of transcriptome expression. The average expression of the two parents is what we call the mid-parent value. Without heterosis, the hybrid transcriptome should be the same as the mid-parent value. But it is often observed that the transcriptome value of the F1 hybrids is not only higher than the mid-parent, it is also higher than any of the two parents. Lastly, according to the epigenomic hypothesis, heterosis can be caused by the new combination of methylated and non-methylated DNA or the expression of regulation RNA when combining two individuals that have different epigenomes. So hybrid crops have a dramatic increase in their yield or performance, which makes them more rentable for growing than purebred lines. Developing a hybrid crop can be achieved relatively fast because it only takes a single generation of controlled crosses with no elimination of undesirable genotypes in the offspring. Because F1 hybrids are genetically uniform, they can be easily and quickly certified and commercially used. However, hybrids are not without disadvantages. Firstly, even though there is genetic variability within heterozygous individuals, hybrid crops show no variation between individuals. They all have the same heterozygous genotype. So similarly to true breeding crops, hybrids are particularly vulnerable to new, unforeseen changes and pathogens in the environment. Moreover, hybrid crops produce non-uniform offspring because of the genetic recombination and random association of the gametes. Therefore, the F2 seeds of the hybrids will have a much more variable production and performance, with some being more performant while others being less performant than the F1 generation. To assure a steady, high production of hybrid crops, the F1 hybrids need to be produced by controlled crosses every year. The crop that is perhaps most often grown as hybrid is corn. Hybridization in corn is fairly simple to achieve. A pollen receiver line is castrated so that it does not fertilize, and then planted in alternative rows with the non-castrated pollen donor line. Then wind pollination takes care of the cross between the two lines. The results of corn hybridization are truly staggering. Hybrids grow remarkably bigger and are more productive than either of their parents. This revolutionary technique has led to an almost six-fold increase in the global productivity of corn since it was introduced in the 1920s. However, growing corn hybrids is not without consequences. Because hybrid seeds are certified and protected, corn farmers need to purchase new hybrid seeds to plant in their fields every year from the breeders that produce them and own the rights for their reproduction. If a farmer would choose not to plant certified hybrid seeds, they would not be able to compete with the productivity of the other farmers that do use hybrid seeds. Because of this, corn breeders have been constantly increasing the price of their certified F1 hybrids. So despite the increased productivity of the corn crops, the cost per unit of yield of corn remains constant.